meetings and not having the time to come to the lesson. And of course, at that time, I was a self-employed freelance teacher, and a cancellation is never good. And so, how can I get round this situation? And so I decided to try telephone. And this was before the days of Skype, video conferencing. And so I've gone from telephone to very basic internet platforms to now cutting edge technology. So yeah, some big changes. Okay, today, so first of all, I want to start by looking at some of the differences between the physical classroom and the online virtual classroom. We'll then look at flipping and blending, so the flipped classroom model and blended learning, and how this can also help maximize not only the effectiveness of teaching, but also how to maximize the actual time that we have with the students and their time. To look at the technology, this is something that will be repeating throughout the webinar in various forms, but just how we can use the technology, what the possibilities are. The main part of the webinar, how to actually tackle writing online and writing tasks, and then a few other ideas and bits and pieces. Okay, first of all, can I just ask, were you teaching online before the COVID-19 situation? So if you could fill in the poll just to let me know. Okay, so it looks like most of you have been thrown in at the deep end. Good. Okay, so the majority of you weren't teaching online before. But quite a few of you were. And Summer was learning online, very nice. Carter joined to learn about teaching online. Yeah, in the years I've been working for British Study Centres, we've also had lots of teachers who were keen to learn to teach online because lots of people see it as being the future. And of course, I've had a long time preparing, learning how things work, and now a lot of teachers have had to react overnight and suddenly learn how this all works. Lovely. Okay, so let me get rid of that one. And one more quick question here. I can move that one out of the way. Okay, and so for those who are already teaching online, have you been teaching writing skills already? Okay, got lots of yeses. That's good. Okay, for the exams. Very nice. Great. Okay, let's leave that there. So the majority of you have been teaching writing skills. That's great. Lovely. Okay, civilization advances by extending the number of important operations which we can perform without thinking of them. I think this quote is very good and very apt, especially for writing, as a lot of writing, of course, a lot of it is reactionary. So we're looking at tasks and potentially lots of the actual tasks we get in exams, or for those teaching business English, emails. You never really know what is going to come, what you're going to have to deal with, what the actual subject matter is. But a lot of writing, whether it's an email, an essay, a review, a report, a story, there are a lot of elements that are standard. And using this structure as a basis means that we're just filling in the gaps with the actual specific topic information. And I think this is what we're trying to get students to be able to do, is that if they're confident with the structure of whichever type of writing task it is, then they just need the vocabulary and, all importantly, the ideas of how to react to the topic. And finding these ideas, this is something we're going to be looking at a bit later in the webinar. Okay, offline versus online. Okay, there are a number of things here. So, of course, the technology, this is the main point. Within that, of course, we've got turn taking. And from seeing that a lot of you, and I assume then a lot of your students, are quite new to the online classroom, there is a certain change in behavior, which I would say from experience, Daniela, yes, it can be difficult online. Absolutely. I think the people adapt very quickly, as we've seen with this whole virus outbreak internationally, that people do react and do change the behavior. I think generally online students adapt very quickly and learn to respect the turn-taking elements. But of course, depending on the group sizes you have, it can vary. Just quickly in the chat box, do you mostly teach groups or private lessons? Group. That's fast. Okay. Okay, but I can definitely see the vast majority of you are teaching groups. So turn taking is relevant. We've also got a lot of privates there, but I think the majority is groups. Good. Also body language. Of course, teaching writing, usually writing itself is usually a solitary activity. It's something we sit down with our pen and paper or laptop and we write. The learning process, of course, involves a lot of speaking, a lot of reading, and it's not just about writing. Of course, the goal is to be able to produce a piece of written work. I'm sorry, Nancy, I just saw you don't have audio. Okay, maybe try joining the webinar again. But this is something that with body language, being able to actually see the emotions of the people is very important. And I think this is, again, a bit like the turn taking, that it's getting people used to behaving and acting online as they do in a normal classroom. And this is a lot about the classroom management, the time management, which we will also be looking at. The lesson format, generally online lessons are shorter. I think our typical lessons are about 50 minutes. I Having taught in physical classrooms as well for many years, I tend to see that an online lesson is much more intensive. Students are more focused, they're more goal orientated, and so the lesson has to be high impact. There has to be a clear goal and to produce something both during and after the lesson as part of the whole blended approach, which we'll be moving on to in a moment. Concentration, I would say often in the online classroom, the concentration is maybe even better. I think, again, as I said, students are more focused. They open their laptop, they're ready to learn, fewer distractions. And of course, it's all basically what we're trying to do in an online classroom is recreate and redefine a real world classroom. And in many ways, for many years, we were trying to recreate the physical classroom. At the moment, we've got to the stage where actually we're almost redefining how a physical classroom would work, because the majority of lessons in the world at the moment are online. And again, coming back to body language, personality is another important part. And this is also very relevant for the whole skill of writing. And this is something we see a lot in, for example, emails. Being able to express your opinions and personality purely with the writing skills, not using emojis to express what the actual sense of the sentence was. Was it humor? Was it serious? This is something we should be expressing in words, not emojis. Multiple intelligence is very nice, absolutely. Style and tone, yes, absolutely. Acronyms, good. Recreate and redefine, I agree, Salvador, very nice. Wonderful. And then, of course, materials. This is a very big part, that a lot of materials, lots of course books were written, developed, produced with the intention of being used in a more, not necessarily intensive, could be an extensive course, but usually with a longer period in the classroom with the teacher, with a group, working on a course book. Now, suddenly, it could be that we're just a short time together with the students in an online classroom, and we're trying to get them to optimize their personal learning time outside of the classroom. Okay, flipping and blending. So who is already, would you say, using the blended learning approach? Yes, blending. No, no, no. Okay, we've got quite a mixture here. Blended learning is awesome. Good. Very nice. Mostly. Um, depends on the student's response. Absolutely. Of course, that's a big point, that some students are not prepared to learn outside of the classroom. Not a lot we can do there, of course. I think this is especially when it comes to writing. Is it applicable on one-to-one? It's a good question. Yes, I would say absolutely. I think as much with one-to-one students as group students, potentially even more. I think we will be looking at some of these points, but that's a very good question with is it relevant for one-to-ones? Because we, with a group class, there's a lot more we can work on in pairs and groups with production, brainstorming, and then the actual producing a written text we can do collaboratively. Of course, when it's just a teacher and student, that can be a little bit more time consuming. And what is the benefit of the student having the teacher sitting there while they're writing? So generally, I would say then it does make more sense for the actual production to be done out of the class. Blended learning is quite difficult to apply when dealing with students in far-flung areas. Yes, possibly. Will you explain? Yes, absolutely. Okay, so a recipe for success. So I'm a great believer in both flipping and blending. So let me visualize this. So first of all, according to Cambridge English, we need approximately, this is general, so for all skills in the leveling system, and this is based on a CEFR. So we talk about approximately 200 hours to progress by a level. And generally, I think this is more so for a lower level, we're talking about 160 hours. And then once you get to the upper advanced levels, we're looking at maybe more 220, 240, but on average, 200 hours of guided learning. And by guided learning, this doesn't necessarily mean classroom time. This could be with specific tasks for outside of the classroom, possibly if you're using some kind of e-learning platform as well. But the actual time the students are fulfilling tasks set by the teacher, basically, which is a long time and can be very expensive if that's all with a teacher. So achieve 200 hours of learning with only the necessary number of hours is the main goal of both blending and flipping. And flipped classroom, so the idea of the flipped classroom, and let me move on to the, so we have assignments, training, guided self-study, homework assignments, classroom activities, constant review and feedback. Of course, this can vary. Of course, the guided self-study, this is the idea out of the class. Classroom activities are in the class. Assignments could be either, and training could also be either. This is the model we've been using in the school. So in class, students are working, and the idea is we use the classroom time to master the skills. So it's really, I was going to say production, but production is also out of the class. But we're using this time to master the skills and to review and to identify strengths, weaknesses, what we need to work on, what can be worked on for homework. After the class, students get homework activities and ideas for further self-study. And then again, before the next lesson, what can they prepare for the lesson? So again, we'll be coming to this in a while, but with a lot of writing tasks, of course, there will be a lot of reading involved, first of all. So maybe you've got to read the task, form opinions. A lot of this can be done in preparation before the class. My BSc, this is from where I've been working in British Study Centres. We have an e-learning platform where students can do homework, self-study, teachers can set assignments. So it's an e-learning platform, so for independent learning. Lovely. Okay, and again here, so just pre-lesson. So before the lesson, students will be informed of what are we going to be doing. We're going to be tackling an essay writing task on this topic. We could have some questions and answers about this topic, and we give them some homework or preparation materials to prepare for the lesson. Maybe some research, form opinions, understanding the actual tasks themselves, vocabulary. Then we have the lesson for actually practicing the skills, reviewing the tasks, for the students to ask questions, and then to develop the skills. And again, that could be micro writing tasks or macro tasks, really actually producing a full piece of writing. And then again, for the homework, we further homework tasks and guided self-study. And again, I think this should be reactionary. It's we're spending time with the students, we're identifying what the weaknesses are, what the strengths are, and we need to help them achieve being able to write for their level an acceptable piece of writing. And so we could identify, okay, they need to practice a certain area of grammar, or they need to develop vocabulary in a certain context, writing summaries, analyzing texts. Yep, micro writing needs to be developed in class, paragraph writing. I agree with that, absolutely. Lovely. Okay, and again, there's a quick reference, Bloom's taxonomy. So again, pre-lesson, so webinar, guided self-study, but before the class. So the main parts are to remember, to understand. So remember here could be very much with the actual task itself, also the vocabulary, learning the vocabulary, and comprehending what needs to be done. Analyzing and evaluating are absolutely classroom activities. And depending on the micro macro, the application as well could be in or out of the classroom. And then at the pinnacle, we have the creation. And again, depending on the type of lesson, the type of task, and what we're trying to achieve with the lesson could be in or out of the classroom. But I think this is a very big thing, and this is what we'll be looking at, is how, firstly, can we maximize the students' potential of what they can do outside of the class, and how can we make what they do in the class more productive and effective as well. Renuka has definitely helped. Very nice. Good. Emma, is microwriting in form of drafting or brainstorming? It can be. It can also just be. We'll be looking at this a bit more detail afterwards. But this micro skills. It could be okay. Tackling how to write an introduction, and this is something that most exam tasks, the actual task itself, that sentence, is what should key in the introduction. But of course, we cannot just rewrite, we cannot just copy the task as the introduction because we're not using our own language. And this is something using synonyms, reformulating. And so that would be a micro writing task, just a small element of a larger task. And some of the email tasks are very, very short. There may be a 15 or 20-minute task, and that might be something you can tackle in a very short time within a lesson. Madamita, you used Bloom's taxonomy with primary school kids and very effective. Great. Yeah, absolutely. Lovely. So the online classroom itself. So the main features of the classroom, as I see it, we've got the whiteboards, breakout rooms, notes, polls, and chat. Okay, let me just, I've not prepared this one, but I'll do it. Takes a second here. This is it's a lovely part of online that you can just react so quickly. So who has used breakout rooms? Yes and no. Okay. So just let me know if you've ever used a breakout room online. Okay, so about 2/3 approximately have, 1/3 haven't. I just saw someone wrote there, great, absolutely. Okay, so the majority of you haven't used breakout rooms. Good. This is, I think, very often, having done a lot of teacher training myself, also for online, I think a lot of this is confidence in using the technology. Polls, you've seen me using a few of these today. Of course, it's something I find in a classroom, it really gets students, as you'll experience yourself now, once students start clicking on things and start writing in the notes, they become much more confident in the classroom and it becomes more interactive and that it almost belongs to them, that they feel that they're part of that classroom, like in a physical classroom. But I think that they're, yeah, quite easy to set up. Notes is, I think, very self-explanatory, and chat, I think you don't have any problems with that. So the main areas I want to look at today are the whiteboards and breakout rooms, how we can use these for the writing skills. Just a couple of examples. So here, this is a whiteboard from Adobe Connect. And I've used a number of different platforms. I've Adobe Connect, Zoom, Vidamo, Skype. There are lots and lots of WebEx. There are so many different platforms. At the end of the day, they are all relatively similar. They have advantages, disadvantages, sometimes depending on where you are in the world, what you want to do, pricing, but the actual functions themselves and what you're using them for as a teacher are relatively similar. Personally, I like whiteboards are wonderful for timelines, for grammar, and diagrams as well for explaining vocabulary. But I think especially when we're looking at writing, I think one of the big points in writing is the whole logical timeline of events. And so he arrived at 12 o'clock. Before that, he had been sitting in a cafe while he was in the cafe, something happened. And we can follow this whole logic of a timeline and visualizing this as you would in a classroom on the whiteboard in an online classroom makes it much, much easier for the students to follow. And the lovely thing is that in almost all these classrooms, we can just click download or send or share, and the students then can collect all of this information. Yes, Daniela, the sequence of tenses students must master in order to write well. Absolutely. And I think this is a very big thing. I also worked as an examiner for Cambridge for a long time, and seeing how the exams are marked, what the examiners are looking for, this really is the structure, the grammatical structure is, yeah, the timeline is one of the most essential parts of the writing, I believe. Um, Okay, Moodle doesn't have it, I haven't known yet. Okay, I'll be looking at a few examples of whiteboards that are independent of the platform itself. So, okay, Tiana, whiteboard is crucial. Absolutely, I agree. Lovely. Um, okay, this is from the complete guide to IELTS from National Geographic. So and it's quite a relevant one at the moment, maybe. International sporting events like the Olympics and Football World Cup place huge financial burdens on host nations that cannot be justified. To what extent do you agree or disagree with this opinion? Um, great. So I'm just looking at the notes. Okay. Go. So this is again forming an opinion. Um, whether online or offline, I think this is something students often have problems with, is that they spend too much time struggling with forming an opinion. And it's something that, of course, when you're learning the process of writing, we can invest more time with this. But at the end of the day, the students need, in the exam scenario, they need to sit down and quickly produce a piece of writing. Just another example of using the whiteboard for brainstorming or mind mapping. So we've got in the center here, we could have, so here we've got the topic itself. So I can just write topic in there. And then we've got, so for pros, advantages, against, cons, disadvantages. So sporting events, so environmental issues would be a negative. Um, and a positive is often the development of the infrastructure. But this is a great way of really tearing apart the whole exercise and visualizing it and getting students to collaborate. And this is all part of the writing task. And I think very often people think that they need to be writing, writing, writing. But when the student is in the exam, they sit down, they read the question, and very quickly they need to form an opinion. And this could be then with your pen and paper, they can start to make a couple of little, kind of jot a few notes. Okay, just, okay, quickly, 5 pros or 3 pros, 3 cons. And that is the basis of their essay or of their writing task. Um, okay, it's an interesting one, Maria. Um, that aren't aware of the most trivial things, so they're incapable of brainstorming. Um, yeah, okay. It's an interesting point because this is something that I know a lot of students, maybe almost the other side. I would say a lot of students are very intelligent, and they want to produce a perfect piece of work, and they spend much too long too long on the thought process and thinking about planning, and they don't have much time to actually write anything anymore. And I think the message there, and the thing I really try to get students to do, is be creative. They don't have to tell the truth. They can make up opinions. They are not being tested on whether the development of an infrastructure, that could also be seen as negative. If you're tearing up the old cobblestone streets and replacing them with lovely clean tarmac streets, some people might see that as positive, some people might see that as negative. The point is to be reactionary, to be spontaneous and creative. And I think mind mapping is a great way of developing that skill. And again, this is something that you can do as a group or in a private lesson, one-to-one. With the larger groups, we can do this in breakout rooms. We can separate them. And we can even get them to look at both sides. Okay, this group is going to be against and this group is going to be for. And so we can force them to develop opinions that are not theirs. So they might think it's a great idea, but we're forcing them to look for negatives. And developing this skill of seeing both sides of the story is a very, very good way to help them develop this spontaneous writing. Okay, breakout rooms. So again, we've got them in Zoom, Adobe. I think most platforms nowadays have the opportunity, the possibility for breakout rooms. Again, it's something you could do it in pairs, in groups. Also for what we say in the corridor briefings, a role play. Okay, I want you to come out in the corridor and I'll give you an extra piece of information that I want you to include in this writing task. I'm going to be looking at this in a moment with some simulations, but I think the breakout rooms, it's something, don't be scared of trying them. You can't break anything in the online classroom. If you send everyone off to their different rooms and you lose them, you just press one button, they're back again. And I think it is once you've tested it, you find actually it's quite straightforward. And there's a lot of things you can do to simulate real world events. So you've got 5 minutes to write an email to an angry customer. And that's it, that's the deadline. It's got to be sent by that time. You can put a timer in the breakout room. How do you give instructions to those in breakout rooms, Juliet? Good question. From platform to platform, it varies. I know with Adobe, for example, in the breakout rooms, if you as a teacher stay in the main room, you can actually write messages and choose, do all students see your messages or just students in breakout room A or B or C? And you can also hop yourself between rooms. And Zoom as well, you can go in and you can decide who you're writing to. You can go to the rooms, visit the students, see what they're doing, help them. And I love, especially with writing tasks and with simulations, I love to go from room to room, looking at what they're doing, maybe giving some ideas or pointers or pointing out any mistakes that you see, and also copying and pasting examples of good and bad. And I'll have a kind of a Word document open and I'll go from room to room, copy and paste maybe examples of mistakes and also examples of good language. And at the end, afterwards, we can then look at this together and analyze this language. Okay, so the material. So we've got authenticity. adapting materials, simulations, which we'll be looking at next, collaborative tasks, role play, critical thinking and problem solving, and discussions. So these are some of the main areas I see, and there are lots of possibilities where we take this from. Of course, a lot of this, a lot of you as well will be using course books, which are great as a kind of the backbone of the course, the structure and the actual syllabus itself. But I think we need to be reactionary and to adapt to the students. And authenticity is, I think, making the lessons more authentic it gives students more confidence in what they're doing. They can relate to the tasks more if it's a connection to the real world. Again, we've got current affairs. Of course, at the moment, there's pretty much just one topic we're talking about. TED Talks, also TED Ed, the education part of TED Talks. There's so much material there. And of course, that is mostly presentations, speeches, but these are wonderful for summarizing. And okay, to watch that, to write a short summary. And with almost any topic we're looking at, we could find a talk that would have some relevance to that task. Yeah, exactly. So Jackie, sorry, what was this? Writing about what we face in life. Absolutely. And I think, again, this is making students, helping them develop this ability to be able to sit down in an exam situation and react to that question as quickly as possible. Let them start writing almost immediately and not procrastinating and thinking, oh, what am I going to write about? Is that right? Is that wrong? It doesn't matter. Just do it. YouTube, of course, online newspapers, authentic correspondence, especially if you're teaching business people, grown-ups. Maybe they've got examples of real emails, letters, reports that they've actually written. Use these as the basis of the lesson. And then also company websites, reports, graphs, charts, news articles. Get them to react to these. And again, it's finding in your course book, we'll have a look. So we've got topics and we can find an equivalent, a real life equivalent to that, that actually matches this, this task. So the writing tasks, so mostly essays, emails, letters, reviews, reports, articles, stories. Again, coming back to what we were saying before about these micro and macro, generally speaking, essays are the longer tasks, as are reports. Articles, reviews, emails, these can also be much shorter. And I think for practicing, we can also set a limit on the actual length of the task so it is suited to the online classroom. Okay, role plays and simulations. This is just a little template I've used for, for adapting simulations and role plays from course books to the group or the student that you're teaching. So the scenario. So a customer has complained about a product or a service. The players could be the customer and the client, or the supplier and the customer. Level of formality, so which register are we using? So you might say, okay, this will be a formal letter or email, or a more neutral Probably not informal unless the scenario is writing from a colleague to another colleague that you know very well. Background for the sender. So possibly you've been asked to write an email to a customer who's not paid the bill, but you are aware that they are in a difficult situation at the moment. So you want to be a little bit more tactful. So we can add all of these little elements to try to really set the scene for what you want to produce. And the background for the recipient. Sorry, so you're the sender, so your background could be you're very busy. You've only got a few minutes to write the email. And the person receiving the email, that they are have been unwell recently. So maybe you want to add a little sentence there, something personal, and anything additional. It's something that, again, if you've got a task from a course book and then putting it on a template like this, you can adapt that to your group, to your students. It will then belong to them. They'll feel that the simulation is authentic. And even if they're making up the details, oh, he just lost a limb or whatever it is, but it's their story. They've developed this story. They've developed the situation, the scenario. They'll feel more confident and they will start to have more fun with this. And that is a big part, making it fun and making it real or feel real. And so be silly as well. It doesn't have to be serious always. And if they can start to enjoy this, they'll start to learn to react to certain features of the writing tasks. Yeah, teens and adults enjoy both. Very nice. Role play requires breakout rooms. Yes and no. I think breakout rooms are very nice if we'll look at a moment with simulations, but a lot of this can be done in one room if you don't have that possibility. And again, if you haven't got the opportunity to use a breakout room, this is where you can use the flipped classroom model. So rather than sending the students off to separate classrooms, separate breakout rooms in the classroom, okay, you get different activities for homework. I want you to write that email and I want you to write the response to that email or another email. So there are ways we can get around using the technology. And this is one of the messages I'll mention later as well, is that the technology is a tool. It's a means to an end. It's not about becoming a technical expert, an IT expert. It's about using and understanding the technology to effectively teach students. The technology should never be more important than what you're trying to produce. Okay, so steps of the simulation. So group briefing. So this is now looking at, for example, with breakout rooms. So the group briefing. So first of all, we are going to be writing a series of emails from a customer to a supplier, or a complaint from a customer to the hotel manager. And then we could, if we're using a breakout room, say, okay, I want you four to work together in this room. You are the customer. You four are the hotel manager. And so we have a general group briefing of what we're going to be doing. We send the students off to their breakout rooms. And now I go for 1 minute into that breakout room and give an individual briefing. And then I swap to the other room and give them an individual briefing. And maybe you want to add a couple of little details. Give them a couple of things to confuse the others, to make it a bit more complicated. Okay, then the simulation itself. And so this is where the students actually start to produce the writing. Then we bring them back together into the main room and we have a group debrief. And then we can actually review the language. And I think this is one of the most important parts, is this feedback. Really identifying what's good, what's not so good, what do we need to work on, what do we need to improve. And I think this is generally, if you think how much material, how many possibilities there are for learning online independently. There are millions and millions of possibilities, but mostly it doesn't work because the students need a teacher to give them feedback. And it's one thing they fill in a worksheet online and they get, okay, 12 out of 20, but there's no feedback. There's no one telling them why that wasn't good, what could have been better, how. And this is what students want. This is one of the main reasons I think students are paying for the teacher, is for feedback. It's not for setting up or giving them a worksheet that they could source themselves. They need the feedback. And also, based on that feedback, you understand what worksheet, what book they need to be working from. So just an example from an attachment. So email one, you request an attachment. The next one, you send the attachment. There's a problem with the attachment. You resend the attachment. You thank them for sending that, or you follow up on this. Again, this I would say could be classified as a micro task. These are a series of 5 very short emails based around this. This is from Life Pre-Intermediate, and it's just taking that exercise and adding another little simulation just to get them to practice the language. A few of you have said, yeah, okay, it cannot be done individually. How role playing done individually maybe, but not in group. From experience, I would say both. I think sometimes it's very nice working individually with a student that you can really sentence by sentence reformulate. And let me give you an example here. So with formal versus informal. So here we've got a disappointed customer. So writing a letter or email of complaint. And this was about a hotel stay. So the informal. So I didn't like my time in your hotel. Okay, so probably not the most diplomatic sentence. So write, express dissatisfaction, stay, Victoria Arms Hotel, 12th of April. So this is something I've often prepared before the lesson. I've taken a series of sentences, paragraphs I would like the students to create. And then we can look, okay, so I am writing to express my dissatisfaction with my stay at the Victoria Arms Hotel on the 12th of April. Embrace the possibilities. Very nice, Linda. Yes. Okay, and sorry about that. Okay, apologize, inconvenience caused. So I apologize for any inconvenience this may have caused. And so again, this is a way that we could be working in a one-to-one scenario. And we can develop a lot of these, I would say, cards before the lesson. Okay, I'm going to skip through a couple because the time's ticking away very quickly. So again, complaints, reply to complaint, request further action, response negative, etc., etc. Okay, so this was from Adobe, an example of how I've set up a lot of these pods before. Writing, see, help me, happen. So I'm writing to see if you can help me. Do you happen or would you happen to have a copy of the slides from last week's presentation? And again, you can prepare this in separate breakout rooms before, so the students can work individually. You can then, as a teacher, your job is the postman. You go from one room, copy and paste to the other room, take their email, give it to the others, and they reply to each other's emails throughout. Okay, and this was another example. You'll get a copy of this so you can look at that in more time, but it's exactly the same. Disappointed customer, and just how you can break down the simulation into a lesson plan. Another model, the hamburger model. Okay, so we've got the hamburger, we've got the bun on top is the soft opening, the intro, and then we've got the bun at the bottom is the closing, the summary, and then the meat in the middle and the lettuce, the tomatoes are the core paragraphs. So we've got bun, tomato, burger, lettuce, bun, and just how we structure the email. Okay, what does this represent? A waffle, good. Why? What am I going to talk about here? I think someone say something there. Yeah, I saw someone wrote cutting waffle. Good, exactly. So cutting the waffle, so getting rid of all the bits we don't need. So editing. And again, this is a very big part. So perfection is achieved not when there is nothing more to add, but when there's nothing left to take away. For first you write a sentence and then you chop it small, then mix the bits and sort them out just as they chance to fall. The order of the phrases makes no difference at all. And Virginia Woolf, I begin to see what I had in mind and want to begin cutting out the masses of irrelevance and clearing, sharpening, and making the good phrases shine. And, to put it bluntly, all good writing is rewriting. Ernest Hemingway. So, what are we looking for? Grammar, lexis, register, appropriacy, punctuation, redundancy, structure, and the list goes on. How? I think this is the most important thing here. So, breakout rooms. So, we could be sending our emails back and forth. We can write essays and then swap between the classes. The essays could be written outside of class time, and then we review them, and you review or correct each other's. Collaborative. Correct it. Halve it. So each group writes an essay, possibly for homework. Then we swap the essays in the lesson, and the students have to try to cut 50% of the words, anything redundant, and shorten it, make it as concise as possible. Improve it, of course, and also then simulations. And also help desk, back and forth, another simulation. Okay, I'm aware we're already at 3 o'clock, so I'm going to blast through these couple here. So examiner criteria, again, what we're looking for. So the points I just mentioned before. So content, language, organization, structure, lexical resource, all the points. And I think this is what we should be thinking about every time we're giving a writing task. What is the examiner looking for? So we need to add adverbs, we need to add adjectives, we need to develop the structure, we need to shorten the introduction, we need to give an opinion in the summary. Okay, point of view essay. So again, just another mind map here, but let me move on because this one here, this is a whiteboard called Bit Paper. So this is a standalone whiteboard software. So if you're using Skype, you could also share this separately. If you're using Zoom, you could share that window of your browser. Another software is Miro. Okay, just a very quick question here. Um, do you use Post-its in your physical classrooms? Have any of you used Post-its before? Yeah, 50-50. Yes, 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 no. Okay, I think we're pretty 50-50 there. Okay, let me end that because we're running out of time. Sorry. Post-its are fantastic. Okay, here. So, can I remember this one? The advantages of being online outweigh the disadvantages. Okay, but again, something with Miro, you can prepare all these post-it notes and then move them around, reorganize them. Great for collaborating on these tasks. Pros and cons. So this was looking at using online. So pros, it's free, it's easy to stay in touch with family, make new friends. The negatives, it can be superficial, no privacy. Okay, this was based on one of the writing tasks from before, but we can really start to brainstorm, and you can change the colors of the post-it notes as you go along. So, okay, let's make this one negative. Let's turn that red. This is green. Um, and then this is Miro. This is a lovely website that you have all of this. So I've got up in the top left hand corner. Yes, I've got a mind map for brainstorming. Then I've used post-its to brainstorm this. I've worked on the sentence structure here, and then we've actually started to work on a task. You've got all of this in one screen, and you can move around between this. It's very, very nice. But again, it's collaboration, teamwork. Okay, so a teacher's greatest responsibility is responsibility. Peter Wilberg, 1-to-1. Fantastic book. This is like the Bible. And it is your ability to respond. And I think this is the main, the key message I would like to give from this webinar is that the tools available, the whiteboards, the breakout rooms, all the various platforms, they give you the opportunity that you can respond to questions, you can change direction, you can make it authentic for the students. And yeah, it's being able to respond. Another great idea is blogs, and this was based on a lesson plan here with a news article. So diaries, comments, summaries, discussions, opinions, reviews. So this was another task from the Life book, was writing a post. But this is something you get students to do either individually or as groups. There are so many free softwares available for blogs. They can set up a blog, and that can be their homework to actually develop posts, write a review, write a feedback, write a summary, give a review on what you cooked for dinner. Okay, so try different platforms, try the whiteboards, try the breakout rooms. Don't be scared of breaking them. And I think especially in these times, students are very forgiving. I think I've been teaching for years online, and of course, until recently, people would always expect a professional. At the moment, students are showing what lovely people they are, and also it's lovely to see how patient they are with the teachers, because a lot of these students, they see, oh, this was my teacher before in the classroom, now suddenly he or she has to teach online and she's having some technical difficulties. And I've not heard of any students getting angry because their teacher got stuck somewhere. They're very forgiving, and ask them. Often your students will know how to do this. They can help you. Use them to learn from them. Blending and flipping. Again, it's use the time in the classroom for reviewing, for feedback, for analysing. The time-consuming writing they can do for homework. And you can use Google Docs, Google Sites. There are so many platforms out there where you can share and collaborate outside of classroom time. And Google Docs, you can collaborate in classroom time as well. If you're using Skype for lessons, you can have Google Docs open at the same time and you can work in Google Docs. They've got whiteboards, they've got everything there as well. So there's lots of possibilities. Peer correction. So getting students to correct the other students' works. A great way of honing those skills of identifying mistakes. Make it real. Okay, again, any way you can adapt that course book material to make it a bit more authentic will automatically make students that little bit more motivated to work on it. Teach, train, and coach. So instruct them, practice with them, and then hone those skills. And review, review, review. Okay, I think we're out of time for questions now, unfortunately.